Good morning, everyone. Kia ora, g'day. How are you? Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Jo Palmer. I'm the Director for Brand USA Australia and New Zealand, and I'm really grateful for you joining us this morning. I'd like to introduce you to our team from Washington, DC, who are your hosts this morning, and we'll be speaking with you throughout the webinar. So we have Jackie Ennis, who's the Vice President of Global Trade Development.
Hello.
So wave, Jackie.
Hi.
We have Carol Ream, who looks like she's in Hawaii, but she's actually in Iowa at the moment. She's Vice President of Research and Analytics. Many of you have met Amanda Davis, our Global Trade Development Manager in Washington, DC. And then we also have Peter Dodge from Public Policies and Public Affairs. So thank you very much from across the US for joining us. This is really appreciated. Also in the background, we have our team here from Down Under. So you can see there Wayne Mitchum, Country Manager from New Zealand. And we also have joining us as a panelist in the background, Tori Goddard, who runs our PR, and Kat Lee, who does our social media. During the webinar, it would be great. We've set this up as a webinar rather than a meeting. So unfortunately, we can't hear any questions from you. But certainly, please do post questions using the question and answer functionality with Zoom, and we'll check after each of the panelists to see if you have any specific questions from them, and then we'll circle back at the end as well with further questions. We'll also send you a follow-up document and a link to a recorded version of this in case that's something that you would like. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Peter. Thank you, Peter.
Hi, and good morning, everyone. I hope that you're all doing well, and thank you for your further commitment to encouraging your clients to visit the USA. I want to start off by saying that during these truly unprecedented times with both our government here in the United States and the governments of New Zealand and Australia imposing their own restrictions on both inbound travel and outbound travel, it's great that we're able to continue these conversations for the future. Brand USA, my role as Manager of Public Policy and Public Affairs, allows me to have constant communication with relevant agencies here in the federal government of the United States, including the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of State, and the Department of Commerce. And through those constant communications, we have a great relationship with these federal partners. And as soon as we know when things are coming down the pipeline, as far as any entry changes or any policy changes, Brand USA is quick to make those updates available to those in the trade and to consumers so that they see fit. As we are still kind of, it seems, both of our governments in a holding pattern when it comes to travel to the United States, and looking ahead, we realize that all 50 states, the 5 territories, the District of Columbia, as well as all different levels of local government, whether that's cities or counties, have their own reopening guidelines that are being pushed out in various phases. One thing that we think is very useful, and we're delighted to allow you to see this, is a resource that combines the COVID information from each state government, Board of Health, each major gateway city or county Board of Health, so that we have the most up-to-date information from those particular state and local governments when it comes to the reopening process, the phases, what to expect, as well as any particular community concerns about the spread of coronavirus in all 50 states and throughout the United States. We also want to introduce a resource for both major airlines and hotels here in the United States, and obviously international airlines, their guidelines and regulations to help planning in the future a little bit easier and to know what to expect. Again, we are in constant communication with our federal partners. I contact them pretty frequently with questions that I have, and so if there's ever a need for a particular question to be asked, and it hasn't already been asked, I would be more than happy to offer that as a service to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Wayne, have there been any questions come up during that? No?
No questions, Jo.
No? Fantastic.
That's what I like.
They might still be coming with Peter.
Okay.
So now I'd like to introduce you to Carol, who will take us through some of the latest research and insights that have come back. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. I am just going to need a moment to switch over to some different slides. So I think what we are really excited about as we look at the consumer research we've been doing in market is to see Australia really pull ahead of other regions in the world in terms of their sort of stage of recovery. And so what I'd like to do is share some of the latest research with you. This is super fresh information. I actually just did a webinar yesterday, so it's nice and new. And as soon as I figure out where this button is, okay, here we go. I'm gonna fast forward a bit through some information to really hone in on the traveler sentiment information. If you'd like some of the additional context that I went through, we can share a link with you for the full webinar and the full data, so you can get to see the whole thing. But today I just want to focus on some of the key elements of consumer sentiment. And around the world, as we think about the impact of COVID-19 on people's travel intentions, obviously it's created a lot of anxiety, and in many places around the world, it remains at that heightened level, if not getting sort of worse in the near term. In Australia, it's exciting to see is a bit of an exception to that. So what we're looking at here is likelihood to travel internationally in the next 12 months. So this is not to the United States. This is just any international travel in the next 12 months. And we're comparing the results that we got in June compared to the 2019 average. So we're looking at a differential from that 2019 average. And if we look at Australia's results, the things sort of bottomed out at 25%, and the most recent data shows that it's down just 15% compared to where it was in 2019. So it's really nice to see that improvement over this time period. If we look at the other markets around the world, it's a very different story. And on the extreme end, you have Korea that's worsened pretty dramatically. So especially in that context, it's great to see that optimism and that improvement in the near term. Obviously, there are important differences as we look at different demographic groups, and we'll walk you through some of the things we've been finding from that perspective. So first, from a gender perspective, generally speaking, women tend to be more conservative, men tend to be more optimistic, and that is all the time, every time when we do surveys like this and we look at the results. And right now, things are pretty consistent from that perspective. So overall, you can see here that men are the decline compared to 2019. Men are a little bit more optimistic than women, so 12% versus 21%. So that differential is pretty notable. In certain markets, it's not quite as large, but in Australia, there's a pretty healthy difference between the genders. In terms of age, you would expect to see older people being a bit more concerned about travel in the near term. So I don't think this is a very big surprise. So the oldest group of travelers here, 55 plus, we see the biggest dip year over year in terms of their intent to travel. But when we look at the youngest group, there's barely a difference, so just -2%. So this is the most resilient segment when we think about things, and there's a very clear sort of relationship between the different age groups and their intent to travel. So in the near term, what we're expecting to see is a faster recovery among younger travelers. When it comes to kids, I think anyone who has small children in the household understands, very much sympathizes with what this woman is going through. It's a really challenging time without access to healthcare for many, while trying to work at home. And one of the things I was really curious about was to see if parents would be more or less likely to travel, given that they're going to be, really concerned about their children, and that sort of nurturing instinct and protective instinct is there, but then also this really desperate need to escape and get away. So Turns out that need to escape wins out in most places. And the differential is really quite large, and demographics does play kind of a role in this as well, because older travelers are more likely to be empty nesters, so that 55 plus group. So that kind of plays into this as well. But overall, those who do not have children are far more likely to say they're not going to travel compared to those who have children. So the differential in Australia for the year over year among people with children in the household is just down 6%. So again, really great to see that resilience coming out of the market. So let's think about the people who are not going to be traveling. And obviously, when we think about why people aren't traveling right now, COVID-19 is really front and center. But even when we think about COVID-19, there are different aspects to it. So one aspect could be the restrictions on traveling, obviously concern about contracting the disease itself or spreading it. And then a kind of other piece, which is, given the restrictions on everyday operations, the experiences that people really want, like entertainment, nightlife, and things like that, could not be available potentially because of COVID-19 restrictions. So that really changes the in-destination experience as well. If we look at Australia's results, the top response is restrictions for traveling due to COVID-19, followed by the disease itself, and the experience. But also important are the financial considerations. So the response, I cannot afford it this year, or I'm uncertain about my financial future, is also a pretty significant response. Also, what we're seeing is that just no desire to travel right now. So it isn't necessarily a reaction specifically to anything else, but this is the context of international travel specifically. So people always have the opportunity to travel closer to home and domestically. Obviously, there are a lot of great destinations within Australia. So the response of having no desire to travel internationally is quite significant, at about a quarter of the respondents opting for that one. Again, age does play a role in certain factors, and in Australia, the differentials aren't huge. One thing you can see is that older people are less likely to be concerned about the local destination experiences, and a little bit more likely to say that they just don't have a desire to travel internationally. Beyond that, the differences aren't particularly large. Now let's talk about vacation planning. So with so much uncertainty, especially when we think about international travel, not only do we have to think about what's happening locally and kind of what's happening in terms of the pace of the disease locally, but also the destination. So vacation planning has been very difficult, especially for longer haul travel, because so much is unknown and the timeframes are so long, generally speaking. So what we're looking at here are the changes people have made to their travel plans due to COVID-19. And what we're seeing over time, well, first let me explain, the numbers that you see above these bars represent the month over month change in terms of percentage points. So the way to interpret this, for example, traveling as planned with precautions is up 5 percentage points compared to last month. And we're finding as we go through time, more people are kind of being definitive with their plans. So in the beginning, when we first started looking at this information, a lot of people were saying, I haven't made any changes yet, but I may adjust in the future. And we find that response has come down over time, and the other options are increasing. In certain markets, staying in a holiday home versus a hotel is a common answer. In Australia, it's about 12%. And international trips, by car aren't really an option there for Australia, so we kind of pulled that out. But It's interesting to see just how over time we're seeing people shift away from that uncertainty, and more often than not sticking with their travel plans, but just taking some precautions. So overall, that's an important first step, obviously, to recovery. Again, there are some differences by age, and what we're finding around the world that's pretty interesting is older travelers are a bit slower in terms of making their decisions. So in most markets, we're finding that older travelers are more likely to say they haven't made any changes yet, but may adjust in the future, whereas younger travelers are faster to make their decisions. So in Australia, the younger travelers are more likely to say they've postponed their trip already, whereas older travelers are still kind of hanging on and waiting to see what happens. And so that's kind of an interesting thing that we're learning that we had not seen before. In terms of children versus no children in the household, so people with children in the household are a bit more likely to say that they're traveling as planned with precautions, and those without children are more likely to say they have not made changes yet, but plan to in the future. And again, the age factor is part of this. Also of note is that people with children in the household are more likely to say that they will choose to stay in a holiday home rental rather than a hotel, and that kind of makes sense when you think about the needs when you're having to care for children. Moving on to some other aspects, but overall, just kind of summarizing the way that we're thinking about this. Why this type of information is so important to us is it helps us really understand where people are on this continuum. And when we think where Australia is compared to a lot of other places in the world, it's further along on this continuum in terms of their response to change. So really, Australia is very much in the experimentation decision sort of section of this chart, where other markets are still kind of deeply concerned and still kind of pulling back and being really sort of unsure about their near-term future. So overall, it's a positive outlook for Australia, especially when we think about where it is compared to a lot of other countries in the world. In terms of budget, not surprisingly, just because of economic concerns, people are tending to say they are more likely to spend less than spend more, but a substantial percentage of people saying they're going to spend the same amount. So 70% in Australia are saying they're going to spend what they would have otherwise spent. And in terms of demographics, people with kids are a bit more polarized, so they're less likely to stick to what they were going to plan, and then they're kind of split between spending more and spending less. And obviously this really falls along economic lines. So if we looked at this by household income, not surprisingly, it's the wealthier people who are planning to spend more. When we look at age groups, again, older travelers are a bit more likely to stick to their guns and stick with their original plans. So they are more likely to say they're spending the same amount, whereas younger travelers are a bit more reactive, again, both positive and negative in terms of a higher budget and a lower budget. And the last piece, preferences. So obviously people's priorities have changed in light of COVID-19. And so when we think about all of the different things people have in their minds as they're selecting destinations for travel, so many things come into play. And what we're looking at here are just some personal considerations when they're deciding where to go. And this is a long list of different things. One thing that we added here that we don't typically ask is reconnecting with friends and family who live far away. And what we're finding is that is a very common response where people really want to spend time with people. And it also kind of kills two birds with one stone. So if you're visiting friends and relatives, you don't have to worry about staying in a hotel or, having to be kind of put at a little bit higher risk, having to interact with strangers. So we're finding that that is a pretty strong response across the board. But to really put this in context, one of the things we did was really just compare it to what it would, again, otherwise be in 2019. So this helps us understand what over-index is and what under-index is compared to what it normally is. And in most markets around the world, we're seeing that staying within my comfort zone is over-indexing. And that's not surprising. That makes a lot of sense. Also in Australia, keeping fit and engaging in physically active recreation is also over-indexing, and that's not consistent around the world. But that is, kind of, it makes sense when you think about being cooped up in the house and not being able to get outside and exercise as much. So that's just kind of two areas we're seeing people are kind of gravitating towards. Again, these aren't huge numbers, but any change in this is pretty important, because this is generally something we see a lot of consistency with over time. What we're finding is under-indexing are things like increasing my knowledge and understanding of other cultures, as well as kind of sightseeing and seeing the most unique attractions. So overall, we're finding that people are really wanting to kind of stay in their comfort zone, stick to tried and true experiences, and not necessarily do something for the first time, again, because everyone's looking at things through that lens of risk. So overall, as I just mentioned, the top priority is minimizing risk. So the things that they're going to be looking for, health and hygiene, trying to minimize shared facility use, avoiding crowds, anything that helps give them the sense of flexibility and control. So cancellations and change policies. Insurance has been challenging because the products don't always cover COVID-19 and some of those situations. So that's been a bit of a challenge. And again, they're looking for those more familiar and tried and true experiences. They're also not trying to check all the boxes. So they're focusing on one element that's most important to them, and not saying, this is not like where they're going to try to do everything under the sun when they go on these trips. They're just really kind of paring things down and focusing on what is their top priority. And while they're looking for low deals and prices, especially in the higher end segments and among wealthier travelers, many would pay a premium for privacy because, again, risk is such a priority right now. So that wraps up my presentation for you. Before I hand things over, Wayne, I'll check with you to see if any questions have come in.
No questions from our partners, Carol, for your segment.
Okay.
Not yet, I would say. I thought that was fantastic, Carol. Thank you so much. I think there's some great insights for us all there in terms of recovery planning. A couple of things that I sort of took from that. I think the fact that we have such high levels of repeat visitation, or so many Australians and New Zealanders have been to the States before, I think does stand us in really good stead. We're wanting to get out and travel again. And we are familiar with the United States. So I think that really stands us in an excellent stead. And the fact that we're wanting more fitness and great outdoors and that freshness, the possibilities there are endless. And I think, there's a couple of pieces in there. I'm going to go back and digest those. That's the first time we've seen them as well, everyone, just so that you know, because it's fresh off the research floor. That will... some really great insights there. So please do think of any questions that you have and fire them off for Carol. And even if you think of them after the webinar, certainly email us, because we'll make sure that we get those to her and get you some responses. I think research and keeping our finger on the pulse is just so vital for us all in our recovery planning.
I've just got one question, Jo. Carol, we've just got a question from Anne. She would like to know, what was the sample size in the survey?
It is 1,000 in each country, and the base is the general population, and we've been doing it monthly for most of this year. Typically, we do it on a quarterly basis, and we started doing it in 2016. So we have a nice big data set to do those comparisons.
Great, thank you.
think,
Excellent.
Wayne, there may be a couple of other questions.
No, I think
No, okay.
nothing else has been pinged. But as I said, if we do have questions, even post webinar, I'm sure Carol will be happy to answer those if we get those to her. So, so everybody feel free. So thank you, Carol. Now I'd like to introduce you all, or reintroduce you all to Amanda Davis, who's going to talk you through some of the opportunities that we have for you to help keep costs down in promoting the US. And then also talk you through the activity that's going on with us at the moment. Thank you.
Great, and thank you, Joe, and thanks to Peter and Carol for your insights. And again, thank you to everyone here for joining us today. All right, like Joe said, I'm Amanda Davis, Manager of Global Trade Development, and I'm gonna walk you through some exciting new opportunities for our tour operator partners, and then update you on some of our activity throughout COVID-19. All right, Brand USA's new toolkit. I'm very excited to share that Brand USA has created a new toolkit for our trade partners. The purpose of this toolkit is to provide creative assets that can be customized and adapted to fulfill your USA promotional needs. It lives on our travel trade website, and I definitely recommend visiting and checking it out. We worked very diligently to ensure that we provided you with high quality and a variety of assets, all intended to give a sense of place, featuring the iconic destinations of the USA, but also the lesser known ones. And in the toolkit, you'll find stills, videos such as sizzles and destination videos, print ads, digital banners, and more. To access the assets, you will be directed to Media Valet, Brand USA's digital asset library, where you will have to register for an account if you don't already have one. And if newly registered, just please let Wayne or Kat know so that we can ensure you're approved as soon as possible. And please note that Brand USA must review all assets prior to use or distribution, so please work with Kat to coordinate any content approvals. And so you're aware this is only phase 1 of the toolkit. We welcome your feedback, especially as we begin working on phase 2, which will provide you with even more assets to choose from. Another opportunity for our tour operator partners is the custom e-guide that is now available to request at no cost at all. The 2020 guide features content from more than 175 destination and attraction partners. And it would be co-branded with your logo, including your business's logo on the front cover. You have the option to add your own custom pages, and you have usage rights across all of your marketing platforms, including social channels. And if you're interested, please just reach out to Wayne for more information. All right, some of our activity during COVID-19. So training, educating, and inspiring travel agents has continued being a focus for the trade team. During this period, we have trained over 3,000 agents in Australia and New Zealand through USA Discovery Program badge completions and webinars. Many of you are very familiar with the USA Discovery Program. It's Brand USA's online travel agent training tool. And there are different modules, or what we call badges, that agents can complete. And the badges are either regional, thematic, or destination focused. New badges are added to the program on a rolling basis, so there's always something new for the agents to learn and discover. And this was especially important during this time when agents were home and had a little bit more time on their hands. In April, we launched an incentive through the program called One Badge Wonder. And for each badge an agent completed during a 7-day period, it gave them a chance to win a weekly prize of a $450 supermarket gift card. The incentive ran in both Australia and New Zealand, and was one of our most successful trade incentives to date, with over 1,000 agents entering and over 4,000 individual badges completed. We are thrilled about this. So we've also commenced bi-weekly travel trade webinars, and the first one had over 280 agents from across Australia and New Zealand. The content of the webinar includes Brand USA trade tools, current incentives, and highlights a specific insider guide, which is one of Brand USA's road trip itineraries. The webinar has a Kahoot quiz as well, integrated into the presentation, which really keeps the engagement level high throughout and makes learning just extra fun for the agents. And of course, we include prizes to give away. These webinars are just a great way to share updates, tools, and inspirational content with the trade, especially now more than ever. And just to note, there are limited spots for our DMO partners to participate and feature in the webinars. So please just reach out to Wayne for more information. In April this year, we created 2 dedicated private Facebook groups for the travel trade in Australia and New Zealand. To date, we have about 900 agents registered across both markets, and they grow each week. And the groups provide the agents in each market a sense of community, and it's a great way for the trade to be kept up to date with the latest news from Brand USA, including webinars and incentives. Road Trippin' USA. So beginning in 2020, Brand USA partnered with online travel trade publication Carry On and Australian travel wholesaler Viva Holidays for an always-on campaign showcasing the USA through road trips. Every other week throughout 2020, a Brand USA itinerary will be showcased in a multifaceted editorial piece on Carry On and sold through Viva Holidays. Just to note, due to COVID-19 and travel restrictions starting in mid-March, Viva Holidays paused all international tactical campaigns, but the campaign is continuing without the Viva Holidays call to action. The editorial tone has also been adjusted to ensure it's appropriate to the current situation, but our intention is to reinitiate the direct call to action when the time is right. And all editorial content from Road Trippin' USA remains evergreen on Carry On's website and will play an ongoing key role in keeping the USA top of mind for agents and generating inspiration for travel to the USA. And since COVID-19 began, we have published editorials on At the Movies, as you can see here on the slide, Route 66 and Texas Hill Country, and Rhythms of the River Brand USA itineraries. So as I touched on just a bit ago, we are highlighting a Brand USA itinerary in our webinars and as well as in our road tripping campaign. And Brand USA has over 30 road trip itineraries that include lesser known destinations as well as the more iconic ones. And they cover the 50 states, territories, and District of Columbia. They are both inspirational and can be bookable through receptive operators. And they are customizable as well so they can fit your client's needs. This information can all be found on our travel trade website, which is just right there on the slide. But if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. So these have all been ways in which we've continued to engage and educate the agents from a trade standpoint, but we've also been promoting our Go USA TV platform to inspire them. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Go USA TV, but it's Brand USA's travel entertainment streaming platform that was launched in 2018, and it's comprised of episodes, documentaries, and films, all about unique experiences that are possible in the USA. Go USA TV is an inspirational tool, but even more so now in this crisis when streaming and digital viewership have grown dramatically. This platform drives inspiration at a time when consumers are most interested, but this goes for the trade as well. Inspiring travel agents is just as important as inspiring consumers. And we certainly encourage the trade to share Go USA TV with their clients. The content will keep the USA front of mind and keep them dreaming about their future travels to the USA. And just to note, these images that you see on this slide represent our new releases during COVID-19, and new content is added regularly. I definitely recommend checking out some of these programs when you have the chance. You can download Go USA TV on your mobile device on iOS and Android, or install the channel via Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Google Chromecast. And you can also watch a curated list of shows on Go USA TV's YouTube channel. So you have lots of options. And just please note that this is a completely free app. The Go USA TV Trade Incentive, in collaboration with Carry On, was launched to encourage the travel trade community in Australia to download and engage with USA-related content, keeping the USA top of mind while agents were spending more time at home. And to enter the draw to win a $500 gift card, agents had to download the Go USA TV app, watch the Alaska episode of Trails and Trailblazers, and answer a couple questions. And in the end, we received 119 entries, over 4,600 editorial page views, and over 83,000 social impressions. And from March to June, we collaborated with partner DMOs in Australia and New Zealand through our regular partner call-out program to compile multiple armchair escapism pitches. As the world spent more time at home, journalists and media were looking for recipes and virtual activities to do at home. The coverage has been updated and sent to partner GMOs as they landed, and here you'll see some of the highlights. Our consumer-facing Facebook page has seen an increase in positive engagement. And in mid-March, Brand USA launched a global interactive campaign, our virtual road trip, that showcased to, through, and beyond the gateway destinations. Facebook and Instagram users were able to engage with our stories through fun interactive polls, video content, and beautiful imagery. And we encouraged fans of the page to share their USA travel memories with us by tagging #UnitedStories and #VisitTheUSA_AU in their posts. So that wraps it up for me, and I will now hand it over to Jackie Ennis.
Hi, thanks so much, Amanda, and thank you, everyone. Thank you to the Brand USA Australia and New Zealand team for getting everyone together this morning. We certainly appreciate you getting up early and joining us first thing on your Thursday morning. We really, obviously, for our trade partners, we obviously did not have the opportunity to connect directly at IPW this year. So it really is a great chance for us to really just give you an update on what has been going on at Brand USA during this particular time. I really, again, just appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. And as Joe said, please feel free to ask questions on anything that you've heard today, and also as I talk through the recovery initiatives. Understanding that, like everyone, this environment is very volatile right now and probably can't provide all the answers to the questions you may have. But we certainly very much appreciate your engagement with us today. Clearly, as Peter said, we're in unprecedented times. There are really so many unknowns, and many of which I'm sure you don't need me to remind you of, but nonetheless, we just to contextualize the environment that we're all operating in. Certainly the continued entry restrictions, the uncertainty of what path the virus may take. Air connectivity is also obviously a huge issue for us. We're seeing across the globe reductions in air capacity into the United States of 90 to even 100%. So what we're facing is clearly unprecedented. And also, what will that travel experience be like when we when we actually do start traveling again, as we anticipate more enhanced screenings and tight protocols. The economic downturn caused by COVID-19 will surely also affect travel plans, although I'm very, listening to Carol's research, it's really nice to see Australia being kind of the bright spark in that research, and we're really, really pleased to be on here this evening after just receiving that really good piece of research. But surely, we do have to acknowledge that what we hope is the short-term loss of the US presence with many US destinations pausing or suspending representation. Certainly, I know there are some of you on the webinar this evening who represent other US destinations, and we really acknowledge the time that you're going through. It's incredibly challenging for everyone in the travel business, and as many of our tour operators and trade partners are business owners, again, probably not telling you anything you don't already know and realize, but we really do empathize at Brand USA with what our colleagues in the US and in our international markets are going through. We all have our budget challenges, and including Brand USA. As many of you know, we are funded by ESTA contributions. So with no international arrivals, those funds are limited. And in addition, many partners simply don't have the resource to partner with Brand USA, which is the mechanism that we have to unlock those ESTA funds. However, we want to remain very optimistic. Brand USA has been really focused on keeping the travel agent community engaged over the last 3 months. The most recent figures are that we've actually trained just over 36,000 agents worldwide in 3 months, which has been a phenomenal effort by all Brand USA teams. And the engagement on our global platforms is as high as it has ever been. You've heard Amanda and Wayne talk about the USA Discovery Program. Just one interesting statistic is that on April 9th, we had almost 35 engaged or active users on that platform. And by May 28th, we had almost 85,000 engaged users. So that's really is fantastic to see that kind of level of engagement with our travel agents across the world. Obviously, while we're working to maintain the United States as top of mind, our thoughts are focused on recovery. The toolkit that Amanda mentioned could not come at a better time in terms of providing quality and inspiring imagery and assets of the United States when perhaps we need them the most. Also, as Peter mentioned, we have created the repository of information, hopefully the one-stop shop for both trade and consumers who want to know what stage of openings are and the restrictions on the ground, as well as providing protocols for major gateway cities and airports and the health and hygiene updates for major airlines and US hotel chains. The thoughts are also focused on assessing indicators for recovery. We do receive weekly intel reports from all the markets, in addition to Carol's research on travel sentiment. Furthermore, we work closely with US Travel, who have provided standardized industry guidance for the domestic US hospitality businesses for promoting health and safety for all travelers on their website. We will actually follow up. I know I saw a couple of questions regarding the deck, and obviously we will share the deck with you and also Carol's research. But we'll also forward US Travel has provided a great PDF called Travel in the New Normal, and also one that just came out recently called Travel with Confidence or Travel Confidently. And these are really great, if anything, just for you as tour operators and US partners in market to see what the general guidelines are that US Travel are promoting to the hospitality businesses. I think we all understand that it's about restoring confidence and trust in the travel experience. So we'll certainly forward those to you afterwards. But clearly, in terms of looking forward to recovery, the hardest thing for us to determine is the timing and getting that right. I'm not really able to get into the weeds of what the Brand USA recovery campaign will look like, but it's true to say that the core strategic elements will not change. These are possibility, proximity, and welcome. The intent is to inspire an international audience to learn from what has been a very unexpected pause for all of us and to make the most of their time when travel resumes. The goals of our campaign will be to drive intent. One of the things that are typically our consumer media campaigns do is that they drive our social platforms, our Facebook, Google, whatever. We drive to our own channels. We drive to the visitusa.au. So that's a typical campaign. What we will be doing is part of our recovery campaign is very much driving to our tour operator partners. So the consumer media that we'll be buying in Australia and New Zealand will be funneled back to a lower funnel call to action direct to generate and increase bookings. Another goal will also obviously be to increase engagement. The more people we can get excited about the United States, the more important that is to us. And also providing a platform for our partners both in the US and internationally. That is a key priority. This is a time to reevaluate the new normal. There is a lot of anxiety and uncertainty. Probably don't need to tell you that, but it's also really important to be optimistic and empathetic in tone. The willingness to travel will return. The abundance of research that we have all digested ad nauseum tells us that travelers are still looking forward to traveling when the time is right. And the United States needs to maintain the share of voice in that recovery. Recovery, as you heard from Carol, will be easier for younger travelers who don't feel at higher risk. but safety for all travellers will be non-negotiable, and we have to be clear in that communication. At Brand USA, obviously, we're working within the federal system so that every state and territory and the District of Columbia has different guidelines, and that can be overwhelming in terms of how we have managed the situation on the ground. But we all understand that as we cautiously open up and our theme parks and our attractions get back to opening, the stakes are high for all of us, and the consumer will be looking for us to communicate those health and safety protocols. There'll also be obviously the uncertainty about the actual travel experience, that it may be not as optimal after this time. But I think, again, the way we communicate perhaps different ways to explore our metropolitan centers, and to really give people different ways of exploring our gateway cities will be really important. There will be clearly a greater emphasis on the road trip and the great outdoors. The desire to be outside and in control in your natural surroundings. And clearly that is one of the big pluses that the United States has, with its open roads and sprawling deserts and national parks and off the beaten path destinations that will be waiting to be explored after this time. Lives have certainly been disruptive and put on hold, but at the same time, the United States remains one of the most aspirational destinations in the world, truly living up to the possibility, proximity, and welcome. The US has to think and to get away, and that brand truth will be reflected in our recovery campaign, as will be a spirit of reinvention. The recovery tone of the campaign will be aspirational, empathetic, inviting, and optimistic. Clearly, we all have many challenges before we can do that. When will the United States be ready? Concerns about the closures of some attractions, and health concerns from when travelers are here. The team in Australia and New Zealand are doing some great jobs in terms of talking to travel insurance companies and really trying to give the best information looking forward. We also need to recognize that we may need to entice visitors who may want to stay closer to home. I think the message from all of our governments right now is, to travel domestically, and that's great. And we want to support our colleagues at home, but also we need to start enticing people to travel further afield. We are convinced that Australia and New Zealand are going to be one of those first market movers back. Economically speaking, and we've all been challenged, but we really feel that economically speaking, Australia and New Zealand is in much better shape than some markets, and we're thankful for that. We're really excited to be part of that journey with you to recovery. We really welcome working directly with the tour operators. As I said, the call to action and that intent to book is really important. But we emphasize that the budget challenge that we all are incurring right now, we will only launch that recovery program when we're confident that the time is right and that the situation on the ground in the United States and the airline recovery the airline capacity has recovered sufficiently for us to merit really pushing out and really encouraging those bookings. So thank you very much for your time this morning. It's evening here, but we really thank you very much for joining us, and happy to take any questions at all.
Look, while the questions may be coming in, I think I'd just like to say thank you so much to Carol, Jackie, Peter, and Amanda for sharing the update. I think I probably speak for everybody across Australia and New Zealand who've joined us this morning, saying that the research really gave some great insights, and I think hearing from you there at the end, Jackie, as well, to understand and for everybody here to be able to hear that Brand USA really does understand the optimism and the opportunity that Australia and New Zealand have. We really are incredibly resilient people and incredibly resilient travellers. And yes, at the moment the borders are closed, and yes, our tourism minister sometimes says things that shouldn't be said and gets misquoted and put in a wrong light. But the truth of the matter is nobody knows yet when things are going to open. But what we do know is that this is a market that is in a good economic shape compared to many around the world. You know, we've had a hit, there's no doubt about that, but it's so, you know, there's underlying wealth and resilience there in the economy. And we just are passionate travellers. And I think it's really good for everybody on the webinar this morning to hear that Brand USA head office understands that as well, and that the research is backing that up. So I think that's fantastic. I also just want to reassure you all that they are difficult times. You know, we haven't been overly vocal and connective because, you know, we've been doing the background things of connecting with travel agents and making sure that we're generating ongoing feel-good publicity. But we have been beavering away in the background, reaching out to travel insurance companies, reaching out with head office and really planning some great activity for when we do come back. So, and we will be connecting a lot more in the coming weeks to start talking about some of those things with you. So thanks for hanging in there, everyone. We will get through this and we will all be stronger for it. Wayne, may I ask if there's any questions that have come through?
Yeah, sure, Joe. We've just got one question here from a DMO rep is asking, are they able to send TV program content for Brand USA to consider uploading to Go USA TV? If so, who should this be sent to?
Yes, definitely. That is something that Brand USA will consider. I will forward you the email of the person that you need to connect with, Wayne, and you can redirect that. But yes, that is something. And actually there is content on Go USA TV that is provided by our partners. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. That's all the questions that we have currently.
Well, before I sign off, I just also welcome Karen, who's our VP of Partnerships, who snuck on. There you are, Karen. Snuck on halfway through. So thank you for joining us as well, Karen. For everybody out there, Karen has been responsible for some of the biggest campaigns that we've done across both countries over the past 8 years. So thank you so much, Karen, and we look forward to trying to channel that back here soon.
Let me just add is, if you go to the brandusa.com's website, the details on the type of content we use for Go USA TV is also listed there. It has to be a very special storytelling, not a promotional type of video. So you might want to take a peek at that too.
Great. Well, again, thank you everybody for joining us this morning. It's been great to, thank you, Joe. It's been great to be able to share this with you all, and we'll be reaching out with follow-up documentation and welcome any questions that may come in the future. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.